Hey everybody, hope everyone's having a good week out there. So today we're gonna talk about Nexusmods and their decisions to ban content from their websites based on what they deem appropriate or not. First, let me drop a little side note here for future context. Back when Spider-Man 1 released on PC and I saw the news about Nexusmods removing the mod that took out pride flags, I didn't really care about it. The thing is that I understand that the choice to actively remove rainbow flags from the game can be straight up homophobic. You could just say that it's your freedom to choose to not have a specific thing in a product that you bought with your own money, and I would agree with that, but when it comes to Nexus, you have to understand that they're a company, and at that point they have two routes that they can take. They can either go the full freedom of choice route and get a negative look from the industry, potentially also getting themselves into trouble because they are a business after all, even if the mods are free to download, or they can take the cautious route and identify certain mods where the line is being crossed in terms of the content, and then remove them. The Spider-Man pride flag situation was one where it seemed to be pretty reasonable, especially because of how pointless it was. The first game didn't even have that many pride flags, like it wasn't a thing that was present in all the buildings, not even in most buildings, hell, not even in half the buildings. Besides, we spent most of our time zipping through the skyline of New York, so removing the flag definitely felt more like a message to send to the public, rather than a legitimate reason for a mod. You know, kind of like those messages that some studios or DEI consultants like to shove into our games now, things that seem small at times but that have a very deliberate meaning behind them, that once seen cannot be unseen and just breaks our immersion. In my opinion, if we get mad at these things coming from one side, then it would make sense for us to get mad at them coming from the other side. Even from an immersion standpoint, it's not something that breaks it. After all, could we really expect a game set in modern day New York not to have a few flags here and there? But in any case, then last year they went ahead and removed any mods that were taking out the pronoun button from Starfield, saying that they would be removing any mods that would be against diversity and inclusivity, and anyone unhappy with that can delete their accounts. Where have I heard that kind of attitude before, by the way? And this is just yet another hill that nobody should be dying on. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. That button in Starfield, the funny thing about it is that it was doing nothing. Bethesda just put that shit in there so they could paint a picture of diversity and inclusion. Whenever someone speaks to you in the game, they're talking to you in the first person, and in the first person there is no pronoun use. Or rather, not like those anyway. I mean, it kinda reminds me of that stupid video circulating on the web earlier this year of the woke hairdresser who would ask her customers what their fucking pronouns are before asking what they want done with their hair. She also asked if she had the consent to touch their hair, which is just, I mean, what can I say, guys? What the fuck do I... What can even be said in these situations? I mean, what do you think I came into a fucking hairdresser for? To have my shoes polished? I wish I could have gone to that place in real life. And if she asks me if she has my consent to touch my hair, I would just tell her no. And then just keep sitting down in awkward silence and see what her next move would be. Anyway, fuck it. Here's the video.
Okay, is it okay if I touch you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what are your pronouns?
They, them.
She, they. I'm glad we exchanged those.
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad that you came in today. So, okay if I touch you?
Go right ahead.
And what are your pronouns?
He, him.
She, her. Thank you for asking earlier. Okay,
Thank
so...
This is performative virtue signaling at its best, completely devoid of any actual thought. You're gonna be referring to each other as you and yours the entire conversation. How would you like your hair? Oh, kinda like yours. And then stuff like, how much? $50. Actually, more like 100, given that this is probably deep inside of LA where the water has rotten their fucking brains. Oh, okay, here you go. Thank you. Come again. I will not.
Cut my fucking hair!
And it's just kind of the same with Starfield. For 99% of the game, the dialogues are going to be characters talking to you, not talking to each other about you. And even in the 1% of cases where these pronouns were meant to work, they fucking didn't. The game still misgendered people, if you can even call it misgendering. Tell me you shoved that shit in there last minute to join the rainbow hype squads of social media and score ESG points without telling me? So yeah, I didn't care that Nexus took away these mods either. The only arguable thing against them is that, as it is with everything in this world, these rules in regards to what makes something anti-diversity or anti-inclusion, or what makes something sexist or racist, what makes something transphobic or homophobic, etc., are not set in stone. There is no super genius AI or a celestial figure peering deeply into the context of our words and the depths of our souls to figure out whether or not our choices or words are being done with negative phobic intent or not. It is very difficult to try to even prove these kinds of concepts in court cases. So what we're left with are people like Mike here, who get so triggered by a question that they immediately get defensive and point them to the delete account button. So when you don't have an actually reliable baseline for being able to tell what is and what isn't problematic, and as this socio-political climate and discourse around these matters becomes more and more edgy, the tendency is that the bar gets lower and lower for what may or may not constitute a problem. And it's not even because of potentially radicalized staff members turning workplaces into nightmares, getting people called into HR for using exclamation points in their messages and whatnot. It's also because public perception is also made much more fragile and unstable. Companies are becoming more and more sensitive and cautious with what the perception of their actions look like. Once upon a time, you could actually chill in the moderate center that valued things like freedom of speech and reality, leaving a pretty good split in terms of what certain public figures or companies or whatever could and couldn't do, could and couldn't present their public, and couldn't say. A company could chill right there at this large spot and just be fine with not associating itself with the right. But now, they have to be right here, at this extremity. Anything past this line can be considered the right, and therefore demonizable and cancelable. This is what has been happening over the past few years. The things that are deemed appropriate or inappropriate to say or present or whatever have been getting shorter and shorter. The idea of a moderate neutral stance has been getting eliminated, and companies have to choose a side to associate themselves with. Otherwise, any decisions or stances that they take that aren't fully on board with one side can be misinterpreted as being on board with the other, even if they're just trying to remain neutral. For example, if a big company doesn't put up a Pride logo during June, people on the far extremes of the political spectrums will see this as an anti-gay statement rather than a company that just doesn't care or doesn't really have a stake in the matter. So, companies can either publicly present themselves and run with internal programs that include whatever ideologies are popular right now, which currently is far left stuff, or they can run the risk of being perceived as a piece of shit company that caters to toxic, problematic people and alt-righters. And when I say companies, it goes for public figures, products, etc. And I think the potential decision of continuing to remove these Angrboda mods are coming from this line of thinking. Nexus has removed mods that make Angroboda white, and I think that this is ridiculous. It doesn't fit the attributes of their previous decisions with Spider-Man and the pronouns in Starfield at all, and I think it crosses a new line that they should have never crossed, a line that opens itself up to all kinds of new problems in the future. At face value, the decision is based on the same removal of mods that are considered against diversity and inclusion. Angroboda is a prominent figure in Norse mythology. She is not an original character that Santa Monica created, not by a long shot. Angroboda is a Jotnar, also known as a giantess. She is supposed to be Loki's wife and the mother of the wolf Fenrir, and the world serpent Jormungandr and Hel, the ruler of Helheim. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names, by the way. She's referred to as the mother of monsters. As a Jotnar, the argument could be made that she isn't white either, but above all, as part of the Norse mythology, belonging to the Norse people, what she was most definitely not is a black woman with a black family. There are interpretations of her as white because, the Norse people were white, and much like Loki, she was capable of shapeshifting, so taking on a human-looking form to mingle with Midgardians and Asgardians. And these human-looking forms are obviously depicted as white, like the Aesir, such as Thor and Odin and Baldur, etc. It is their culture and literature. This should not be surprising to anyone. One thing that I am always against is the race swapping of real historical figures or mythological figures from real countries and cultures. Listen, if you want to remake The Little Mermaid and make her black, go for it. I mean, it's tacky, because you're just condescendingly pandering to black people to profit off of it, instead of actually showing an interest in representing them by creating a brand new story and setting around the criminally underexplored African culture and mythology. But at least you're not doing an unequivocally wrong thing that should not be tolerated, and that most assuredly would not be tolerated if it was switching characters of color with white characters, aka whitewashing. There is a history of whitewashing in Hollywood over the years. It doesn't surprise me at all that it happened, but instead of correcting this by ushering in a better future, where we as a society wise up, become aware and mature of what is right and what is wrong, and set boundaries that are needed to build a better tomorrow, they are instead overcorrecting in a disgusting way, which is to actively participate in the willing discrimination against white people and white cultures and history. Here's a video if you want to go into it, because I will not be doing it here. It's not just white history and culture that are at stake either, but we'll get into this in just a second. Because of this, it is perfectly acceptable for Sweet Baby Inc. or whoever the fuck to show up at Santa Monica studio and get him to put in a black angroboda, for example. Because basically, fuck the Norse people, I mean, what can they do anyway? They're white. They're at the lowest rung of consideration in this modern society. But that still doesn't change the fact that Angroboda is who she is. It doesn't change the fact that she is a giantess of Norse mythology, a figure of Old Norse culture and religion created by them and therefore worthy of the same respect that we should give any other cultural, mythological or religious works. And the key word here really is should, because like I said, these people don't really have much respect for non-white cultures and people either. Here's a BBC show featuring Achilles and Zeus. And don't even get me started on Cleopatra, a self-described documentary trying to erase and rewrite Greek, Roman and Egyptian history, and blackwashing a prominent historical figure based off of what some old woman says that her grandmother told her. Again, this aired as a documentary and the world allowed it to happen. So yeah, don't think by any means that this is only targeting white people. That's not what I'm saying. This is actually targeting pretty much all of us. Technically, they even fucking targeted African history, albeit differently. In the film The Woman King, they take the Dahomey tribe that is known and documented to have killed, enslaved and sold African people into the tricontinental Atlantic slave trade, making them a wealthy regional state, and tried to shift this story into painting them as heroes and freedom fighters. This really did not go down well, which I am very thankful for, because it shows that we're not all asleep just yet. But it's still worthy to note that it happened. It passed through all the checks that it needed to pass through in order to be made and published. And if that doesn't show you the rotten state of the entertainment industry, I don't know what will. Because it's not just that this was allowed to happen, it's that we are all supposed to be so sensitive, right? We are all supposed to be so super aware and super careful and super sensitive of the things that we do, the things that we say, the content that we produce, the stories that we are teaching, you know, all of these things. We are supposed to be so hypersensitive, but then something like this just goes through the system and gets made and published. But at least nobody got race swapped. Like, Europeans are free to make a movie about Europeans and misrepresent their own history all they like. It definitely hits different than having it done for racial reasons that would make it racist. Basically, we have a bunch of out-of-touch, narcissistic, unhinged Hollywood-type retards doing whatever they want with history, culture, religion and mythology, and then little celebrity and corporate bootlickers eating it up and defending them. Essentially the same type of people who like to post things on social media like eat the rich. Except these rich right here. No, these rich ones are good. These narcissistic, out-of-touch freaks over here who couldn't sully their clothes even if it meant to save someone's life, these ones are the good ones. Like, we like these ones. Because they're virtue signaling and pandering to us for money. But the other ones? Oh no. The other ones are bad. Eat the rich. What Nexusmods is doing is either showing their utter and complete ignorance or stepping over a line that will let us all know that they've gone too far. Angroboda is not black. Santa Monica decided to depict her as such in their game, but that doesn't make it historically accurate, and changing it doesn't make it racist. If there is an issue here, the issue of race swapping a character, then Santa Monica is the original perpetrator of this issue. When you ban a mod that simply literally adds the historically accurate depiction of that character, you are telling your community a few things. One, that you have no interest in a moderate, factual, neutral view of the situation, by ignoring the fact that Angroboda's human depiction is a white woman. Two, that you are led by what the public perception tells you. And if this is the road that you're willing to go down, you can bet that you're going to open a floodgate. Three, that you are willing to bend and break for any kind of public scrutiny that makes you look anti-progressive, even when it doesn't make sense, such as the present case. If they continue banning mods that are changing a character's look to fit their mythological origins, based on what it would look like to the public in terms of diversity and inclusion, and whether they support it or not, they are going to open the floodgates for all kinds of other things to be removed based on the same exact values, such as mods that dare to make prettier or more attractive female characters because of male gaze, or even mods like making kids unalivable in Elder Scrolls games because of how obviously wrong that is in a realistic context. Basically anything that can be picked up and made to look inappropriate or as an attack on someone or something will have an open door to be bitched and moaned about, and then Nexus is going to have to respond to those cases. The modding communities of the internet have always been such a lively place, filled with the craziest of ideas. Finding contextual problems is going to be incredibly easy for these types of people to do if they choose to be malicious enough, and from my experience, they are always malicious enough. I've seen modded characters getting posted on Baldur's Gate communities that end up with the posters getting lambasted with personal attacks, being called incels and pedos, considering those types of mods to be inappropriate. This is what the fuck I'm talking about, by the way. I'm not talking about nudity, it's just a character. Within modding, people have always had the freedom to twist and mangle their games to look however the fuck they want them to. Wanna put CJ in literally every brand new AAA game? Well, you can, and you should. It's funny as fuck and it doesn't offend anyone. Want to replace dragons with skins of Macho Man Randy Savage, complete with voice clips for dragon sounds? You can. Want to give Fallout characters giant fucking breasts and apply jiggle physics to a 20-year-old game engine that doesn't even know what the fuck to do with it? You can. Wanna have the ability to throw Wraith into the stratosphere? You can. If you start screwing around with the essence of this freedom to create and install things that are of no harm to anybody, just for the sake of pandering to the same kind of people who are never satisfied with anything, who keep ruining most spaces that they inject themselves into, then you're cooked. And I'm not even talking about any genders or anything like that right here. I'm talking about Karens. The miserable Karens of this world who are always looking for something to get mad at. Always looking for something else to find offense in. Something else to cancel. It's not my fault that they all seem to cluster together in the same kind of groups that have the same politically correct opinions. You don't understand that when you start going down this road, it is never enough, and if people want to find a problem with you, they will, and they know just the tools to apply that pressure with. And as the host of a website that hosts mods for video games, a fucking industry that these people already find so many problems with, it will not take long for more and more problems to pop up. Black Myth Wukong, for example, is a game that these kinds of people detest, because the game's media cooked their brains enough to make them believe that a monkey game in Chinese mythology should have had representation of marginalized groups, otherwise known as diversity and inclusion. And again, by these people, I'm talking about Karens. I'm not singling out or generalizing anyone. If you watched my Veilguard video, you know that I don't discriminate anyone based on their gender, race, or sexuality. The majority of LGBT people just want to live their lives and be left alone. They don't have time for any of these fucking issues over here that other narcissists inject themselves into to speak on their behalf. If things keep getting more and more sensitive around these topics and people don't wise up, how long until demands are made of even which types of games are even appropriate to feature on your website and which should be removed because of supposedly supporting anti-diversity and anti-inclusion beliefs, which aren't even rooted in any factual analysis and are just part of what the current narrative is, such as what happened with Black Myth Wukong. In a random blog post, literally the first one that I clicked, there was a paragraph where a community member expresses how excited they are to work on mods for Silent Hill 2, which reminds me of all these memes making fun of some of the characters' terribly detailed potato faces, such as Angela's. Will Nexus even allow mods that change these characters' faces or full body models if it can be perceived as misogyny, sexism, and objectification to the kinds of people that they will inevitably be fostering? Because that's essentially what happened already. Not with the flags, I can see the point there. Like I explained at the start of the video, it's a very deliberate change. It shouldn't matter because it's so rare to find them. It's also not forced on the player, it doesn't have any impact on immersion, gameplay, or storytelling, so the only thing that it really does do is send an anti-gay message. And the pronouns too, like fuck it, it's a pointless menu option. We can talk about the reasons why Bethesda put it in if you want, like we can play the famous Starfield rant right now from Az and point out how every single thing that he was talking about is exactly right and was completely exposed this year. We can talk about these ideologies affecting game development, which it did. I mean, look at Starfield, not even Bethesda modding community wants to touch it. They prefer to keep making mods for Skyrim and Fallout, and that really grinds their nuts too, because notice how Bethesda slipped in paid mods this time around without nobody even making a fuss, with their creation menu. Lots of modders are already taking advantage of the system, making mods and pricing them, and of course Bethesda is taking their cut of the proceeds. So the fact that Starfield died out is very bad for them. That's definitely a valid discussion to have, but on another video. Right here and right now, on Nexusmods' behalf, that reasoning isn't even relevant. What they have in front of them is a menu option that can be switched off. To allow in a mod that removes that option says something that goes against the current political status as well, so their reasoning as a company for removing these mods makes sense. But Angroboda does not fit that criteria because she is not a black person in real life, and the changing of her character model is not unlike any of the other thousands of mods that do the same thing for player choice. Furthermore, it has a logical basis in historical reality, as she was depicted as a white woman, because again, fucking duh, it's Norse mythology. I hope all the discourse surrounding this matter makes them rethink their position and don't continue down this road of banning potential re-uploads of this mod, as that would be a sign that this website has not lost all manner of logic and things are still operating at a base level of self-awareness and common sense. I think the number one thing that they should actually be taking notice of isn't even people like me arguing for these mods to be allowed. It should be posts like this arguing for this mod to be banned, because posts like these from people like this, literally already using cancellatory language and calling any website that allows that mod as disgusting, and that the only correct way to operate these pages would be to remove it. This right here is the kind of language that Nexusmods can continue to expect going forward into the future if they start catering to these people by essentially giving them an entry point into policing content and making enough noise on the internet to get it banned. Now, before I end this, I'm just going to debunk what seems to be the most common responses to this that I'm seeing online, which is, duh, it's a fictional character, Kratos isn't real, the Debs can do what they want, it's their game, and duh, Kratos is Greek, you okay with a Greek god in there but not okay with a black Angrboda? You're telling on yourself. First, if your excuse doesn't work the other way around, then it's worth shit, understand? If you can excuse a black race swap but not a white race swap, your argument of freedom of creative choice is null. Second, this isn't about the studio. That ship has sailed. At the time, what I hoped for was the exact same thing that I hoped for the Ghost of Yotai. That it is just a pointless little thing and that the rest of the game will be completely devoted to the writing, gameplay and story, which is precisely what thankfully happened with God of War Ragnarok. The actual content of the game was brilliant, it kept me entertained, immersed and on the edge of my seat all the fucking way until the very end. Hopefully Ghost of Yotai will be the same, and this whole debacle about the actress's tweets and Sean Layden's stupid comment about don't like it, don't buy it will all be a distant memory. This has nothing to do with the studio, this here is about Nexusmods' decision to ban something that is completely innocent, unharmful and presenting a historical accurate depiction of a character. There are thousands of mods all over this site that change all kinds of characters into wherever the fuck they want. The reason why Angroboda is being changed into a white version is not because the KKK learn how to fucking mod video games and are trying to whitewash black media. It's because that's what she looks like in Norse mythology. And now with the final point, Kratos is an outsider. He is a fictional character being adapted into a real setting of Norse mythology, a setting that was heavily researched by Santa Monica and perfectly established in the 2018 game. And even Kratos' place within was done so well. Think back to 2018, people were actually excited to see a new God of War, but not exactly excited about the Norse mythology setting. It was something not everyone was on board with, and it was even making some people think that it was going to be a reboot, which people didn't want either. Instead, it was handled beautifully. Kratos travels for fuck knows how long and finds that place far, far away from his home. The lore is brought together, confirming that all of these mythologies exist together, mingling in Midgard and then magically expanding into their own mythological realms, such as Helheim or the Underworld. Kratos is not a replacement of a mythological figure, he is a new fictional pawn, put into a new original story. And obviously they take their own liberties with the content inside, but they don't misrepresent it, and especially they don't undermine it. This isn't a careless injection of a Greek man for diversity, it's a work of art that is actually using the mythology to tell a new and compelling story. If you want to justify that changing Angroboda and their family to black is fine to you and bears no impact because it's fictional and that's fine. You're free to make whatever justifications that float your own personal boat. But whatever you do, don't compare a vapid changing of the race of a character for diversity and inclusion to the thoughtful and carefully planned adaptation of Kratos' own character and story into the setting of Norse mythology. One has nothing to do with the other, and you're just looking like an idiot grasping for straws when you say that. And I guess that's all I had to say in regards to this topic. Please drop a like if you liked the video and subscribe for more if you haven't yet, it would really help me out. And as usual, if you have any thoughts on the matter or feedback for me, leave it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you on the next one.